everyone, and welcome. Today, it's been a while. Sorry, I haven't made any videos, but today, finally, we're getting together this little panel of writers, which I've been wanting to do for so very long, to chat to writers who are in various parts of, I guess, in various times of their writing career. And but all of us have been in the industry for a while, and I thought it would be fun to get people's perspectives and insights and experiences in the field, and just getting interesting a conversation going about what to expect, what has been what we've experienced, like I said, and that way we can all support each other, and B, it'll be kind of maybe a nice insight for if you are starting out and you're looking for I don't know, some information on what to expect in your journey. So without further ado, we have these wonderful writers here today. My name is Victoria Nicola. We have, I'll just go in the order. We have Katherine Blakeney and Casey Melnrick and Faith Consiglio. So welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on this video. I'm excited to do this. So I would love it if you guys could go around and introduce yourself, talk about what sort of genre you write in, and what is your current WIP, like what work in progress. So if we can start with Katherine, that'd be great.
Hey, I'm Katherine Blakeney. Your video just froze. Oh no, it unfroze. Sorry.
Okay, fabulous.
Just a second. Yeah.
Please let me know. Yes.
Welcome. Okay. So yeah, I'm Katherine Blakeney, and I am an animator, author, and graphic novelist. So I write historical fiction pretty much across the board, and I am currently working on a novel, a historical fiction novel set in World War I Paris. And I'm working on a graphic novel about Napoleon taking over outer space. And yeah, and I just finished a dystopian science fiction short film that is making the rounds in international film festivals.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
When can we see that?
Yeah, I want to see the film.
Well, it's sort of on the festival circuit right now, but I'm going to be making it available online once it's off. It's actually won some awards already, so I'm really happy about that.
Congratulations.
So,
What's it called?
and it's also I've just gotten a distribution offer from a company in Canada, so in Montreal. So I'm sort of working out the details and signing a contract soon.
For the film? For the film?
For the film,
What?
Yeah.
And what was it called? Casey asked, what was it called?
It's called The Junkyard of Eden.
Ooh.
That's a good title.
Wonderful title.
Is it a historical alternative history, or what is it? What's the film?
It's sort of a, sci-fi, steampunky, dystopian. It's a little bit like The Matrix. So there's sort of an alternate reality situation going on, and an evil puppeteer who controls cyborgs through a computer. So it's basically the world we live in. It's very real.
Kind of. Wait, so did you, what part, did you film it? Did you direct it? Did you write the screenplay? Like what parts did you do? All of it?
It is a stop motion animated film. So I wrote it, directed it, animated it. I created the characters and the sets, and I did the lighting design, the cinematography, the editing, the sound effects, the music. What else? Well, everything.
You are a one-woman show.
I have a studio at home.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I can't wait to watch it.
I can't wait to show it to you.
Okay. Anyone following that is like, I mean, me
Oh,
following
can
that,
we
I'd be
just
like,
Nope.
About
Nope.
like, I don't want to follow Katherine's amazing life.
Oh my gosh, I would love to know more about everything about your creative process.
That sounds so cool. We could just talk about you for an hour.
Maybe we should.
I want to hear about you guys.
Redirect everything.
Plan B, guys. No, no, I still want to hear about you two because I want to catch up with you guys. So Casey, you're next.
Okay. My name is Casey Melnrick, and I, by comparison, am really boring. So I'm still pretty early in the process. Still kind of in the querying process. I primarily write fantasy. Wrote a thriller once that I loved, and I keep telling myself to go back and keep working that one, but primarily working on fantasy that, I have a really hard time kind of blending that idea of what's adult and what is young adult, especially in today's market, and kind of figuring out where those lines and how it kind of straddles the different markets and can bounce back and forth. So working on a story right now, querying a project called The Gravedigger, about a gravedigger who can actually dig up ghosts, and ends up digging up the ghost of a missing king, and really trying to dive into magic systems that at least I think are fairly new. So I'm actually having a lot of fun with it. So I'm up to about 35 queries into January. So it's right at the time where agents would be interested to see what all of you are experiencing, but everybody's just getting back to the office and just reopening queries. So excited to sort of post holidays and post New Year's really get back into it.
That
So can
sounds
we have
amazing.
that as a topic for later discussion about timing of queries?
That's a great topic. I would love to talk about that for sure. And also Casey, it sounds a little like, okay, I'm really bad with knowing when the genre becomes paranormal, because I feel like paranormal could really overlap with some fantasy. Do you think that it rides like the fence a little bit with the ghost take?
Possible. It's pretty, I'm learning a new term, second world fantasy. That was new to me here about 6 months ago. And so I think it falls squarely enough kind of within more of that world than paranormal.
Got it.
The ghost character becomes this very human character, and other than the fact that most people can't see him, it's less about the paranormal and more about kind of what he's trying to do and what they're trying to do. So it's possible. I'll have to ask Catherine.
I actually read some of that. I don't know, did anyone else here read any of it?
I don't think so.
So we were swapping for a while. I don't think it would be paranormal. I think you're right, Casey. Like maybe if there were zombies, or if the ghosts were more like a different kind of creature or something, maybe.
More ghosty.
But yeah, they're very humanized, but it's a really unique story, and I really like it so far.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me, if it's second world, you're right, then it wouldn't be paranormal at all. Like I think it kind of reminds me of have you guys read The Way of the Kings by what's his name, Brandon Sanderson?
I didn't read that one.
It's his newest like series, and he kind of has he like dives, he's really straddles, it is second world, so it's not paranormal, but he does that where he talks about the mythology of this place, and it kind of it swerves in and out of like the real world and like their version of heaven, and like these kind of spiritual beings almost, in a way. So it's like an interesting, I think that is considered then fantasy completely.
Maybe it could be a good comp.
It would be a good comp, I think.
Okay, I will
look into it. The Way of the Kings. I mean, it's not, I may have like it's not technically about the spiritual beings. The main characters are all people, but their mythology is really closely linked to these. They're called, I think, the Knights of Radiance or something like that. And they were these beings that came from heaven, and it was, so there is a concept, they're almost like angel-like, so it's kind of like that. And he talks about gods a lot. So anyways, interesting.
I will have to take a peek. Thank you.
Yeah. But that sounds like a fabulous idea. I love that concept. And how about Faith?
So, hi, my name is Faith, and mostly I've been writing science fiction and fantasy. I think my first book that I ever wrote was a dystopian science fiction that never got published, but I definitely learned a lot writing it. And then I went to fantasy, young adult fantasy, and I worked on Where Ashes Rain for like 6 years. And it just got published by an indie publisher in December. So that was really exciting. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I guess there's definitely a sequel in my head for it. But in the meantime, I wanted to write something else. So I'm actually working on a young adult sci-fi that I've been comping to like a YA version of Circe by Madeline Miller. And Spider-Man.
Uh-huh.
Good comes.
That's
So
exciting.
I really love it, and I'm so excited about it, and I definitely believe in that story, so I want to really see it through. I've already gotten a lot of rejections, which we can talk about, but I really do think it's a solid story, and I feel good about it. So I'm going to be working on that for a while.
And I've read the first couple chapters, and those comps are about as accurate as it gets. So it's super fun.
I agree. I second that. It's a great story. It's beautiful. I love the mythology behind it. And it's basically a superhero story about a girl. So it is very much, I love that you use Spider-Man, because that's what I thought. I was like, it's just like Spider-Man, but not at all.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Well, and then, so what I'm working on, my name is Victoria, and what I'm working on right now, well, I started originally a long while ago at this point. My first book was alternative history / first world fantasy in a way. It kind of sounded like it was similar to Catherine's type of work, where it's like, it's based in this world on historical events, but there's like fantasy elements interweaving it. And I really loved the story. I believed in it so much, and I learned so much, and it went nowhere. And then I think the closest I got was getting a revise and resubmit that asked me to delete like 50,000 words.
So like,
I mean,
half of it.
yeah, it's like, well, it was like because it was a really long book. I think it was 125,000 words. I didn't understand a lot yet about the writing industry, so I just wrote my little heart out until I realized that was way too long for a first novel. So I did delete a ton of words. But and I learned in that process as well, like when you're cutting the fat essentially from a novel, what goes, what stays. So that was a great learning experience, but it went nowhere. And then I self-published a couple books in 2016. They were archaeology, inspired by my archaeological experience. Also first world fantasy, Indiana Jonesy type books. And then I continued writing. I decided to not do this like first world fantasy anymore. I wanted to like write a full-on second world fantasy. So I did that. I wrote a couple of YAs, and then I kind of wanted to do, I got a little burned out of writing YA, because we can talk about it later, the whole difference between YA and adult and what goes in it. And so I was just like, I just want to focus on maybe like an adult version of a fantasy world. So that's what my last one is. So I'm clearing that. I'm also kind of close to like that 40 rejection mark. I had also like a revise and submit that was really close, and it never went anywhere either. So I'm kind of in this interesting world where, sorry guys, I should probably turn my phone on plane mode. So anyway, so that's where that book is. And then my current work in progress is I also want to see if what I could do without the fantasy elements. So I'm writing historical fiction that's like strictly historical now. There is a touch of it's not fantasy, but because this is set in what's considered ancient Russia, but really just medieval Russia, and like it's called Kievan Rus. They're still a very, very Viking-like society. And if anyone's watched Vikings, there's like that element of magic to it because they believed in gods and prophecies and stuff, but there wasn't it wasn't technically magic, it's just they're faith-based. So that's kind of the world I'm trying to paint, where I'm straddling between keeping it in the realm of reality, but they do have this faith in prophecy and magic, potions, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I feel like I just want an element of fantasy somewhere. So I have to like stick it in somewhere, even if it's realistic. But that's what I'm working on now.
I love that one. I read some of them too. I love that one.
Thanks. Yeah, I
And
need
just everybody send me their whips after this.
Yeah, I know. It sounds so good, right? We should
Catherine.
we should just beta read for each other, please, because I love being in that process too, where you get to learn all these cutting edge ideas, and then you get to like brainstorm about certain issues in it. That's always exciting. I'm always texting Faith. I'm like, I have a problem. Like, what do I do here?
We talk it out. That's actually the best part. Like, that's the biggest difference when I started writing, and it was just so like isolated, just something I did on my own, versus now just being like, do you want to read it? Do you want to read it? And just getting as much input as I can, and especially from other writers. I feel like it makes such a big difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah, when a writer actually reads it rather than just friends and family who love you and they don't want to be mean. Right? So, I mean, we've already touched on some interesting subjects, which we can go around and like throw some ideas out, or we can talk about like our experiences in the publishing world. Where do you guys prefer to go? We can also go back to maybe like the timing, as Casey and Faith mentioned, of querying, or differences between adult and YA.
I think I would kind of like to talk about, the whole querying process, whether it is timing or how do you get connected, right? At least for me, the idea of conferences has been really tough the last couple of years with COVID and with everything, and everything I'm finding, is, close to unsolicited queries right now. And so how in 2022, amid a global pandemic, how do you even make those connections, right? Versus just the cold call. So I'd be curious, people who are finding some success.
Catherine, can we talk to you about that? How did you find your success?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way, but, I would say in general, it's really about doing everything. That's really, I know I sound a little crazy sometimes when I start talking about all the different things that I'm doing, but that's actually what works for me in terms of life in general. I just try everything and see, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So in terms of querying, I've definitely done a lot of cold querying. I've done conferences, I've done a Twitter pitch fests, and for example, my debut novel, which was a young adult sci-fi about archaeology in outer space, that went through like 100 rejections or more, and a lot of different revisions and redrafts, and I ended up selling it to a small publisher through a Twitter fest. So I just pitched it on Twitter, and they liked it, and I sent them the manuscript, and they bought it. So that was how I published my first thing. I got my first agent through Thriller Fest. So that was an in-person event. They had a pitch fest as part of Thriller Fest. That was in 2019. So you just get to pitch agents. There's a room full of agents, and you stand in line and you give them your pitch for like a minute or two, and you talk about it. And if they like it, they ask for more. But actually the manuscript that I pitched at Thriller Fest was the one that I worked on during the New York Pitch Conference, which is where we all met. And so the pitch conference helped me develop my pitch and work on my novel. And then I pitched that at Thriller Fest, and I signed with my agent after that. And And actually now I got my graphic novel deal from going to New York Comic Con and literally just networking and speaking to people in person, showing them my work, telling them about my current work in progress. And a few people were interested and they said, send me your materials, I want to see more. And one of them offered me a contract and said, we want to publish this.
Can you tell us what was it like being at Comic-Con? Like, what did you actually do there?
It was really cool. I love New York Comic Con. I go there every year whenever I can. I mean, whenever there's no insane pandemic and everything is canceled. But yeah, I mean, this is actually the first year it was back after the pandemic. And it's really exciting. They're just, all of these different publishers, all of these different comic book publishers, graphic novel publishers who have their tables set up and, they're selling their things, their current publications. And I would just come up and start talking to them because sometimes their editors are there, like their chief editors are just standing there and, advertising their latest book. So I would just talk and look at what they were selling. I would buy something if it interested me, if I thought the style matched what I was working on, if they were working in the genres that I'm interested in. And I would say, oh, well, this is cool. I'm working on something like this myself. And, coming to something like Comic-Con, they're open to having these conversations. They want to talk to people. They're there for networking. So it's just about coming up to people and, being in your face and saying, I'm an artist, I'm working on something that I think is cool. And I think you might like it too, based on what you've published in the past. Do you want to take a look? So you're technically not supposed to be pitching at Comic-Con, but it's a conversation. I'm not pitching. They invited me to submit to them.
Right.
So yeah,
Do you wear a costume?
I considered it, but yeah, no, I just wanted freedom to move around. And sometimes, cosplayers, they have these huge weapons and like wings and things like that. And, it's very crowded. It's very crowded in New York Comic Con. So yeah, I thought maybe next time.
How was it making this? Also, I'm sorry asking so many questions. Someone else can jump in.
Well, no, go ahead. I do have a question. But
like how you made the transition from writing prose to writing a graphic novel. Like, how did you learn how to do it?
Well, I have to say it wasn't really as much of a transition. It sounds like it was, but I really do everything the same way because I'm an animator. So I've actually been drawing since before I can remember. So we have it. Yeah. So whenever I write a novel, a prose novel, I actually draw all of my characters. So again, those of you who met me at the New York Pitch Conference, I came with this binder of sketches of my main characters. I can't write a novel unless I see it. So I visualize it really vividly in my head. I draw the environments, I draw the characters. So I'm sort of always doing a graphic novel in my head, but I've been writing these, 100,000 word novels. And I thought, well, some of these things might actually work better as graphic novels. Why don't I just do that? So I spent some time reading a lot of graphic novels and comic books and sort of looking at the formats and the layouts and how do people actually put this together professionally. And I tried it out and I put together these big, huge pages. They're 11 by 17 Bristol boards.
Wow.
And I just started, laying things out and using what I learned and using what I learned about storytelling and narrative structure and pacing when I was writing prose novels and applying, and of course, making short films and applying that to this. And, everything really comes together. I always start with a storyboard because of my filmmaking background. If I'm making a film, I'm writing a prose novel, I'm writing a graphic novel, I always make, actually I have one of these here. I make a board with all of my story beats. I use a 3-act structure and I work out all the details, pacing, character arcs, intertwining plot lines. And it's just the same method for whatever medium I'm working in. And I put together a story and then I start either writing it or drawing it or filming it. And if all goes well, it turns into something.
My question was, at something like Comic-Con, if you don't have a graphic novel, you can't really, right? Because it's really about graphic novels and that kind of world rather than just a novel, even if it's sci-fi or fantasy. Would it be weird if you go and try to pitch them that? How does that?
Actually, some publishers, some comics publishers are publishing prose novels as well. They're also doing novelizations of films and of comic books. So for example, like there are, Spider-Man novels out there that are actually prose novels,
Right.
that you can just read without, without pictures. Also, there are a lot of writers, just because somebody wrote a graphic novel doesn't mean that they're an artist. A lot of graphic novels are written by teams. So I actually met this one author who was there at Comic-Con, and I read one of her graphic novels. Vera Green Tea. Her name is Vera Green Tea. Yeah, and she had this really interesting and elaborate supernatural story, and she's just the writer of the story. So she actually hires artists to do the drawings for her. So she creates the story. She writes up a script. It's a little bit like a film script or a play. And then she hires an artist and she describes the images to them. Like, this is what I want. And you have the technical ability to draw that. They work as a team and then they get published as a team. So you can actually get an agent as a graphic novel team. So yeah, I mean, if any of you guys are interested in going into graphic novels, you can keep that in mind, that you can just be the writer and still work on a graphic novel.
Well, because when I wrote the book I'm working on now, I actually considered making it a graphic novel, but I was just like, I don't know how to do that. So I just started writing it as a novel, but it's still in my head that it could be. So
especially because it is about a superhero. So it'd be right down that superhero lane.
Yeah, I'll have to read some more graphic novels and see.
If you need any recommendations,
I will. Yeah, I'll definitely be in touch.
Absolutely. I'd love to share. I mean, I've been doing a lot of research. I've been checking out libraries. Again, Comic-Con, I did so much shopping at Comic-Con, just looking at things that reminded me of something that I was doing or that I liked, and thinking, okay, well, these publishers, they like, fantasy with historical elements, or I really like the artwork on this one. I like the style. This is, again, close to something that I would do. So they might be interested in what I have to offer. So I think that's definitely something that you would want to look into. Just look at graphic novels and, look at the ones you like and find out who published them.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you think that these more in-person connections are more valuable than cold querying? Do you find that it's more valuable?
For me, I've had more success with in-person connections, even if I've also, I did Thriller Fest again this year, and it was online, so it was just Zoom meetings. But even that, you just get such an immediate response from the agents that you're speaking to. If you send out your query letter, you send out 50 queries. Most of it, let's be real here, most agents never respond. Like, you might send out 50 queries and get maybe 10 form rejections, and that's it. And you never find out, did they not look at it? Did they not like it? What did they not like? Sometimes they tell you, a lot of them, they tell you, I didn't fall in love with it. What does that mean? What did you not? Was it the characters? Was it the writing? And I've gotten these really infuriating rejections saying, okay, I love your writing. I love your world building. Your characters are awesome. And this is just such a great story, but it's not for me.
I hear that. I've gotten those rejection letters and it's like, can I throttle you, please?
So frustrating, because you're like, if you're spending time actually responding to my query, give me constructive criticism. Tell me, okay, I love your characters, but the pacing was a little off for me. Or, I'm not really looking for a World War I story right now. I prefer World War II. Just tell me. And sometimes
it makes me wonder, maybe they didn't really read it.
Exactly. Sometimes you think they didn't really read it and I'm wasting my time. When you have that in-person meeting, you know that they're listening to you, because it's just you and them, and they're staring you in the face and they can't ignore you. So at least and you can also monitor their reactions. Like when you're giving your pitch and you think, okay, their eyes lit up when I said that, and they seem to drift off when I went here. So maybe this part is a little long, or it's a little boring, or maybe this isn't such a great idea. And they might give you these immediate responses and actually say things that they wouldn't put in an email if they were thinking about it.
I agree. I feel like the farthest I've come was always at a conference. But then I did talk to another writer who is her first novel is about to be released. So she got the agent, she got the publishing house, blah, 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 blah. And I was talking to her, and her opinion was that, and I don't know if I fully agree with her. Her opinion is that with conferences, because you're face to face, a lot of agents will feel pressured to be nice to your face, and so they'll make it sound like they're interested, but in reality they won't be, and you won't actually get the honest feedback that you can from like a cold query. But I'm like, but you're at least getting a feedback. With a cold query, you're like most likely never going to hear from them again. That's
a good point. Like this, I guess it goes back to if our conference is worthwhile or not. Like, because there are some conferences where I think they paid agents to be there. So as part of that, maybe they're going to be like, okay, yeah, send it over, but they don't really want to take it. But there are conferences, I think, where people do get contracts. I just, in my experience, I guess I haven't gone to any of those.
You know, I mean, sorry, were you going to say something?
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, it's sort of up to you to be able to get feedback that they're not necessarily giving you. Again, with a cold query, it's just a blank piece of paper, so there's nothing. But if you're speaking to a live human being, even if they're all saying the same thing and they're all saying, yeah, that sounds great, just send it over, and they're being nice, but you can still sort of read their faces and their body language, and you can try to analyze how they're responding to different parts of your pitch. And also the fact that, yes, they do sort of feel obligated to give you extra attention, but that can, in a way, work in your favor. Yes, when I did Thriller Fest and I spoke to like 10 agents, I had 100% request rate. Every single one of those agents asked to see more materials. Only one of them actually ended up speaking to me long-term, and she's just given me a revise and resubmit with some really detailed and friendly feedback, because we had that in-person conversation, and she felt like she needed to say something. She couldn't just reject me and say, just forget it, I'm not interested. She explained what was, you know, what issues she had with it, and she gave me the chance to resubmit it. So fingers crossed, gonna be doing that. We'll see if she likes it more.
So you do think conferences are worthwhile? I mean, it sounds like they are. Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I agree. Like, I've gone to, ever since the pandemic, I've gone to 2, I think, of these they're called one-day conferences. I think they're just called like writers. Oh gosh, I don't remember. It's like some basic name, but they're city by city. So Sacramento has one, San Francisco has one, Cincinnati. Like, I went to a Cincinnati one because it's all on Zoom nowadays. Because it's on Zoom, you can literally just chase whatever. If you look at their schedule and you find an agent on there that you like, you can just attend this one-day conference. It's not, I mean, it's not going to break the bank, because you don't have to fly there, and it's like probably $300-400, because I think it's like there's a minimum to enter the conference, and then there's like $30 per pitch. So depending on how many people you pitch to, that's how, I mean, you could go up to, you know, like you can pitch to every agent there, I guess. So it'll be pricey for you. But usually I've chosen like 4 to 5. I think the most I've done was 6 agents. But so, and I have had, like, also, like you said, 100% of everybody asked for something. I think like 75% asked for a full, which was exciting. But then I only really heard back from one agent that was like really in depth, gave me also a revise and resubmit, like super in depth of like what she would change, and like really like really honest feedback about like where the market is and what needs to be changed in order for it to be sellable. And so that was super, super helpful. Unfortunately, like I was telling Faith, she left the industry. I think she just she stopped being an agent by the time like half a year passed when I sent her back my query, and she just wasn't really an agent anymore. So that, you know, sucks for me, but that's been my experience too. And I guess I'm glad I'm getting like a confirmation from you, because after I talked to the other writer, I'm like, oh, maybe it is a waste of time if people are just being nice, you know?
But the networking is the best part, I think. Even if you, like, the networking is the best part, because even if you don't make that connection with an agent, like that's how I met all of you, and that's how I get to like learn so much. So that to me is actually the best part about a conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a question about the agents, right? So I agree that at conferences, yes, there's always that in the back of your mind of, oh, are they just saying yes, just to say yes? Went to a couple in the Seattle area and same thing, got, every agent asked to send at least a partial, a couple fulls. And then you hear that you're talking to the other attendees and you hear that everybody's getting the same request, right? And you find that one person where they're like, oh, only 2 out of 3. And you're like, all right, I'm doing something right. But then with that, so one, if you get the feedback, that's great. 2, I wonder, as somebody early in a career really trying to break into it, is it okay to then write on other query letters, so-and-so at such and such agency requested the manuscript, right, to indicate interest? Or is there a danger in that where then somebody can read that and say, somebody passed on it, right? So I wonder where the line is, where you can use it as a credibility thing versus not.
I think you want to do that unless it's an editor. If there's an editor who requested, and then you write to an agent and you say, this editor from, let's say, Random House is interested, or HarperCollins is interested in my novel. I've done that actually after the New York Pitch Conference, when I did get requests from a couple of the editors that we spoke to. And I used that as leverage in my query letters. And I did get some additional interest because agents like an easy sale. So if they think, okay, HarperCollins already likes it, because when I did ultimately get an agent for that same novel that I was pitching at the pitch workshop, he sent it to those editors who requested it at the pitch workshop. So it did, it did work in that sense. They ended up not buying it. That's sort of another matter. Another important thing that people should remember, when we get really intense about getting an agent, you think, I just want that one, first agent and my life is going to be made for forever. It's not, because the whole submissions process, once you get your agent, it's at least a year on submission after that. Just going through revisions with that agent, submitting it to publishers, and then it's just like querying again, because then your agent writes query letters and sends them to publishers and waits for responses. And then they send form rejections just like agents do.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing also that I learned, was just how long everything takes. Like, I'm sure if you're already a best-selling author and you write your sequel, that might go pretty fast, but you're like, everything's so drawn out. And I think during the pandemic, it got even more drawn out. I know, so my publisher is a really small publisher that was just starting out. So I kind of didn't expect them to be like so super fast, but even from the time that I got the contract to the time it actually was published was at least 2 years. So, and that's like, and then I actually wrote the book like 4 years ago. So it already had gone through all those years of editing and submitting and everything. So it's like, by the time the manuscript is published, it's been like 6 years. So when I guess that's just an important thing to remember, to like not get discouraged if it's been a year or 2, because in like the publishing world, that's not that long.
Yeah, the timing of everything is just it is so drawn out. And I have to remember, because I think we all like instant gratification in this modern world, but I definitely have to tame myself a little bit and taper my excitement and kind of remind myself, like, okay, this is like, if you're writing a book now, even if it like perfect, like if it's perfect, it goes a perfect, like, I query the first like 50 agents, blah, 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 they request, it's like 2-3 years down the line, this book might get released. Then that's if everything goes like actually according to like a smooth journey. Most of our journeys are like this. So
but even from the start, like just the querying process, there's some response times of like 6 months or even like a year. So you're just in limbo for so long. I guess that's why it's good to have other projects and other things.
Always working. Yeah. I just, Faith, I just submitted to one of the publishing houses I texted you the other day. And I think I might be exaggerating, but it was something ridiculous, like 6 months. Like, we take up to 6 months. And I was just like, what? Wow.
I do have to say once in a while though, and I think Casey and me and both had this experience, we queried an agent and she answered the same day. I was like falling off my chair.
And what was cool
Even
about that one, right? Like the first half of the letter was definitely form letter, but there was a second paragraph and I'm like, that feels like somebody actually wrote a note, right? Which is weird for an agent just responding so quickly. So I texted Faith and I think you queried her that night or the next day. You got a response and that one also had a different second paragraph. So I don't know if it's just like
experience. Like
yeah.
she like not a form letter, but super fast response. So
yeah.
I have to, you told me about that. I still have to query this agent. I forgot.
I love comparing I think it's because Casey, like she gave you a really good compliment and you were like, but is this real? Because it's like always what we think.
Oh, I didn't believe her for a second. I was like, she is messing with me.
I was like, it is.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get a compliment.
I know. I hate the like, oh, you know what also boils my blood a little bit well, this happened with a few of the conferences of the conference requests. A lot of them were like, you can definitely write. You have such a great writing style, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, or you have a great voice. And a voice, in my opinion, in a way, could be like the hardest thing to catch, to like actually get down. And you have a wonderful voice in your novels, and still like, but this is just not what I'm looking for.
We're so cynical now.
I know.
We're like, can a compliment be real? Like,
yeah, I know. Well, what do you guys think about like when you do work with people, when you like beta read, well, at least when it's your friends, you can like hash it out, but with like agents or with maybe if you're on beta reading platforms, what advice do you take when somebody tells you what to change and what not to change?
That's such a good topic. Because one thing I've learned through the years in this industry is that it's so subjective. I have a story about that because I recently did one of the consults through the Manuscript Academy, which is associated with Manuscript Wishlist. And they did give me some really good advice, but one of the things that they'd said was, oh, this is young adult, your voice, it sounds too adult, like make it sound younger. The first query I got that was rejection after that, the person said, this voice sounds too young. And I was just like, so, there's always like a little bit of that confusion. But in general, I feel like I wouldn't change something, especially if it's something drastic, unless more than one person said it. I think that's generally a good rule. And then of course you can also weigh like who it is saying it, but sometimes that's also hard to gauge because the person who told me to make the voice younger was someone who's very experienced in the industry, but maybe they didn't have a full concept of my work or what I was going for, and it didn't actually work that good for the story. So yeah, I think, but she was the only one who had said that. So in hindsight, maybe it's something I shouldn't have changed, and I ended up changing it back.
What has been, Catherine and Casey, what has been your experience in that?
Well, oh God, it's so painful. I mean, PTSD.
There was painful, like choke every time I think about it.
Yeah, no, it's just what Faith was saying. Like, I get that so much because I had an agent. Note the had part. So I did get an agent. I was over the moon. It was for this novel that meant so much to me that I was working on at New York Pitch Fest, and he said he absolutely loved it. He loved everything about it. Then we went into revisions, and all of a sudden he says, change this and change that. And he actually made me change the entire first chapter to make it from the POV of my main character's 17-year-old sister. Now, this is not a young adult novel. This is an adult novel. The main character is male, and there are a lot of male characters in it. And he's like, well, men don't read books. It's like the books are, so you need to have a female entry into this novel. Like, but she's a teenager. It's going to sound young adult. Like, trust me, I know. I'm an agent. I know. So he starts, I did it because he told me to. He sends it out on submission. And every other publisher says, this starts out like a young adult coming of age story about this 17-year-old girl, but she's not a major character in the novel. The main character turns out to be completely different. And I actually wanted to, I asked for the full manuscript because I thought it was going to be about her. So,
wow.
So the
I
novel,
hope you saved the earlier draft.
I did. So the novel didn't sell. And then that was okay because he was my agent and we were working on my second one and I pitched it to him. I had an idea. I told him all about it. He said, that sounds great. Write it, send it to me and, we'll start selling it. This is even better than the first one. So I wrote it. I spent months and months. This was actually during lockdown. So it was an interesting time for me. I was sitting at home months and months, just writing this novel really intensely. And I sent it to him and he's like, you know what? This is actually, this is nothing like what I thought it would be. I'm like, this matches the synopsis exactly.
Wow.
Well, yeah, but it's different. I'm not sure how it's different, but it's different. And then he starts giving me these huge revisions again. I'm like, you know what? You are destroying the spirit of my novel. That is not how it works. If I change this and this and this, it will be a different story. That's not the book I wrote. Can you please try to sell this? So he started selling it. And like 2 weeks into submission, he completely chickens out. And he actually withdrew it. Like people didn't even respond. He didn't have time to respond. He started withdrawing it and everybody thought that I'd gotten an offer from someone else.
Oh my God.
Oh my. And then he just tells me, you know what? I can't. He's like, I don't know how to sell this novel. This isn't what I thought it would be. And if you're not going to do it the way I want you to, I don't know how to sell this.
Whoa.
This is so important. I feel like that you're sharing it because for us, we're like, yeah, it's like, oh, you get an agent and then everything is great. And it's like, but that's so chaotic and stressful.
Insane. And, and he actually, at least he was honest about that. He said, this is actually a great novel. He says, like, it's not that I don't like this novel. I think this novel is brilliant and it's exactly what you wanted it to be. But I can't sell a novel like that. That's not what I do. That's not what I want to do. So he's like, you know what? I won't help you in your career. Like I'm going to be a hindrance to you as an agent. So you should find someone else. And we parted ways and I'm looking for a new agent now.
Wow.
And it turns out he is selling picture books now. And mine was like this really heavy duty psychological about like deeply.
You just broke him.
Yeah, he's like, picture books it is, no more words.
Exactly. He said it, he was depressed. He was afraid of my novel because I had people like with severe PTSD having like nightmares and visions of
well,
death.
you definitely helped him in his career to realize what he was
what he does not want to do.
And some agents, they want that depression, right? That really dark stuff. So if nothing else, to have made it that far, there's your proof of concept. And I think kind of like Faith was saying, I think that's a good reminder for everyone that there's somebody out there, right? Law of averages is a law for a reason, I think. And sounds like you've done the homework, you have gone back, done everything that you need to. And so I think that's also a good reminder of keep doing the work. And somebody will find it. It'll find home.
And we put so much faith in these industry professionals, but they're also only human too. So I think back to like the advice, like what advice you take or not, I guess just because it's from someone that's in the industry doesn't necessarily mean it's great advice. I also remember from the pitch conference when I shared my title, Where Ashes Rain, the facilitator didn't like it at all. He's like, that's too literary sounding, whatever. But so many people have said that they still remember the title and they really like it. And I was just like, I really love this title. I'm not going to change it. And other people said that it was good. So that's another example. Like, just because someone is in the industry doesn't necessarily mean that they will have I guess the correct advice, but even the word correct is sort of subjective too. I guess the correct for your story.
And I think it's interesting, Catherine, how he said, I don't know how to sell this novel. We always forget, like, we're trying to cross the T's, dot the I's of like what they want and what they, trying to submit it, but based on just their preference. But it's also like their skill level and what they know that they can sell for sure and what they've learned they can sell over the years, so they might want to read your book as like a reader, and they might enjoy like the adventure, but if they don't have the connections maybe with the publishing houses that they know that it needs to go to, or whatever, maybe their confidence level, or maybe their whatever it may be, if they don't know how to sell it, I can see why they would back out. And that's what I think we get lost in the art of it, and we forget that there's like this practical aspect of what can be sold to what
Exactly.
publishing and what can make money.
That's a great point.
And I think so in the revise and resubmit that I got, the last one, she actually basically told me a similar thing. She said, I like your story, but in this market, you're not going to be able to sell this to a publishing house unless you change A and B and C. And she's like, if you change A, B, and C, like, feel free to query me again. And so, and you might disagree with what is being sold, but it's just the name of the game at the moment.
That's a good question, actually. I wonder what you guys think about that. Like, based on your knowledge of the market, are there certain things right now that just aren't selling, or that are really selling, or is it impossible to really know?
No, it's impossible to really know, but definitely there are always things that, well, nothing is a guaranteed sale, but there are things that will sell better, that have a better chance of selling, things that have a worse chance of selling, for example, also things that have better chances of selling in different genres. So let's say you're writing historical fiction and you have certain, you're using certain archetypes, certain types of stories that you think are really cool and that work really well in your novel. But on the historical fiction market today, those will not sell well. But let's say for young adult, maybe they love that, and everybody's doing that. I mean, that's something that personally I found very forcefully. I've been reading a lot of new historical fiction, especially connected to the historical periods that I'm interested in, which is mostly around World War I. And I'm seeing a lot of things that are selling well. They have significant differences from what I'm doing. They do certain things that I don't want to do in my novels, So I look at that and I think, if I have to do that to sell my novel, then it's just not worth it for me. I don't want to write it that way, not because what they're doing is bad. It's just not the way that I want to do it. And let's say in graphic novels, for example, some of the themes that I really enjoy exploring and some of the types of stories that I like to tell, those are actually really hot right now, and those are selling well. So in this case, it's really good to have that versatility and to be able to sort of choose your direction based on what's happening today, and think, well, maybe this story that I'm working on right now, I can sell that as a graphic novel. I can't sell that as a prose novel today, maybe tomorrow, sure, but not today. So maybe it will sell better as a poem. Maybe it will sell better as a film. So it's good to sort of keep an open mind.
Let's just make our manuscripts into films first.
Exactly.
Yeah, script manuscripts.
Use whatever you have, any sort of experience you have, any connections you have, any other interests that you have. Just explore that and go for that. Can it be a poem? Can it be a play? Can it be a film? Can it be a graphic novel? Can it be a serialized comic book? Whatever, can it be a piece of experimental performance art? Whatever, a musical composition. If you want to tell this story, if you are in love with this world or these characters or these themes that you want to discuss, what other ways can you present that in that will work for today's audiences, that will in fact sell in a different world, because these worlds are actually really different.
I think that's a really good point. And I noticed that you are saying like graphic novel, script, art performances, but a prose novel right now, I think it's so impacted that it's just a hard sell in general, like across the board. I mean, I do get like, I have seen a lot of people say like dystopians are still off the table, maybe urban fantasy is still off the table.
Dystopian,
When
I should say.
yeah, dystopians often, like, people don't want to read any dystopians, especially in the last couple of years. Then I heard, when I was in my last in-person conference, which was 2019, which could be totally different now because that was already like nearly 3 years ago. She was telling me that it was a small, was it a small publishing house? I don't remember. She was basically saying, I really like your story, but I'll be honest, it's a hard sell right now. And it was an adult fantasy. So she basically was like, if you make it a YA, it would probably sell better. But that was like in 2019. But then in the last year, I've been noticing more agents on like the hashtag MSWL would say things like, I'm really looking for adult fantasy. Like, I'm really packed with my YA fantasy. But then I also think middle grade is really in demand. If you can write middle grade, it sounds like all agents are looking for anything middle grade, which I have no interest in writing. So tough luck for me.
It's also hard if you were going to maybe change to that. By the time you do it, it might not be what they want anymore. So that's a difficult thing about writing for the market, because even if right now I'm like, I don't know, there's some topic that's really hot selling, and then I go and I write that, and 3 years later it's not anymore, or it's completely oversaturated. But I absolutely love Catherine's artistic scope. And just like, I'm just imagining like, Victoria, your book can be an opera.
I just need to get a master's degree in how to write an opera.
Or you could collaborate, you could get together a team. If you're excited about your story, you can get other people excited too. So
that just reminds me of The Witcher, which is a series on Netflix now, that was originally a book, became a video game first. And it became a really popular video game for many years. Like, I think he wrote this, like, I don't know, I don't want to be wrong.
In the early and mid 90s.
Yeah, like 30 years ago. And like, then it was a video game, which is really cool. Like, if someone wanted to make a video game out of any of our fantasy books, that would be amazing. But then it became a very successful Netflix show so many years later. So it's true that there's so many different avenues and outlets to tell the story, but it's true, you have to have the story first.
Yeah. And I actually know somebody. I remember when I was so innocent entering this world, and I became a member of Romance Writers of America, but even though I didn't write romance at all, but it was just a good in to like learn a lot, because they kept doing, like, they met once a week, or was it once a month? I don't remember. They met like regularly, and you got access to different classes and editors and takes, and so it was like really helpful as a newbie writer. And one of the gals I met there was currently writing a video game. Like, she was hired on, like, she was collaborating with another fantasy writer, and they were creating a video game. And so they were writing the characters, they were writing the plots, and they were writing the adventures. And so it was like, I remember like first introduction to writing, and I didn't even realize, hey, of course you need writers to create these experiences.
Right. I bet they go to Comic-Con.
They do, because I actually years later there was Worldcon in San Jose like a few years ago, and I went to Worldcon, and I saw her like across, and she was like in a crowd of like people wearing costumes and stuff, and I felt like really awkward to go talk to her, because it's been so long, and she's like in a crowd of friends, and I'd be like, hey, do you remember me? So but yeah,
I think we need to all go to Comic-Con and dress up in character costumes.
We should all get together for Comic-Con.
It's about as fun as it gets.
When is the next Comic-Con?
Super fun.
When is it?
In October. There are actually a lot of different conventions. For example, I'm doing WinterCon, which is also sort of a Comic-Con, in March, in the middle of March. I'm going to be in Artist Alley there. So I'm going to be showing some of my work. And
where is it?
Things. It's actually practically in JFK Airport.
Oh,
I need to do it. Maybe I'll see you there.
Hey, you should go. I mean, because I'm doing it because I practically live in JFK Airport. So it's like 5 minutes away from my house. It's really convenient.
That's really good. I wish I was on I feel like East Coast does so well with all these writers events. I wish I had more access to it.
And there are a lot of writers there as well. Actually, a WinterCon, it's not just for comic books and graphic novels, it's a sci-fi and fantasy in general. So they do have a lot of just prose writers coming, and again, filmmakers and comic book people and toy designers and video game designers and all sorts of different people. And it's just such a great opportunity to network with these different people from different fields and learn about what they're doing and get inspired.
Mhm.
What's happening.
That's really good to know. I think maybe we could get better about, I mean, I know I can get better about, maybe I need to create like an events calendar and see what's actually possible. I know, Faith, you've been talking to me about the possibilities of going to a few different places.
I was interested in the London book fair.
Mhm.
I know that's like the hardest to get to, especially now, but I don't know, Catherine, have you ever been to it or thought about going to it?
I haven't been to the London Book Fair. No, I mean, I've been to the Edinburgh Fringe and all sorts of things happen there, but that's different. No, the Edinburgh Fringe is wild.
Oh,
We'll have to look into that.
Highly recommend it.
uh-huh. What do you think is the best for now? Like, because I think Comic-Con, World-Con, a lot of that, or like the Georgia one, the Fantasy Con or the Dragon Con, those are, I feel like those are better for fans of writing and fans of books and already fans of different creations rather than actual writers. Do you guys know that? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Like, you obviously made a connection at one of those Comic-Cons, so are there any writer conferences that you've experienced that were helpful at all?
Thriller Fest.
Which one?
Thriller Fest.
Thriller Fest. That's
I
right.
think I'm gonna go to that this
Not just
year.
for thrillers.
And does that move, or is that in one location? Where is that?
No, it's it used to be at the Hyatt Hotel in New York, but I think they've changed their location. I mean, the last one was virtual, so I think when they have their next in-person,
Sheridan in Times Square in May.
Really?
So it is going to be in person in this year.
Yeah.
but that's really great. They have a lot of panels, they have a lot of different author events, they have this whole pitch segment, like there's an entire day of pitching that you can sign up for. You have to pay for that separately, but it's really worth it. It's great. Yeah, just a lot of mingling as well, and like really serious professional writers talking about their craft.
And it doesn't have to be like your genre doesn't have to be thriller.
Not at all. No.
Okay.
Just, it's funded by the thriller writers of, I think it's the Thriller Writers of America or something like that, International Thriller Writers. I'm not sure, but it's the Thriller Writers organization, but they cover all sorts of genres, and the pitching opportunities are for everybody. So it can be a romantic comedy. But I mean, there will be agents there who are interested in thrillers, but if you pitch them something else, they'll look at it.
I know there was a big one. I was looking into it. Chicago, they do some big event, and I can't remember the name of it. I just started looking into it before stay-at-home orders in 2020, and now the name escapes me. But yeah, kind of what Victoria said earlier. You know, us West Coast kids. A lot of it I feel is kind of that Midwest East Coast thing, which makes sense, but would love recommendations trying to get back into it. I was just actually Googling this exact thing a couple weeks ago, as hopefully things start to open up summer and fall. Would love to get back to a couple things.
Casey, are you interested in doing like the online conferences?
I've looked at a couple. Yeah, absolutely. Had seen a few, and I just haven't signed up at this point. Have been trying the query letter route. I'm still kind of new to the Twitter thing. Turns out I'm a really bad millennial, right? I'm trying to get better at it.
No, I don't really use Twitter either.
I only use Twitter for pitch fests. Yeah, I have like no contact with Twitter outside that.
Also, the Twitter pitch fest, I actually wanted to ask you that earlier. I feel like, so I actually got my contract with my indie publisher through HitMad on Twitter. But in more recent years, I feel like the pitches or the tweets are just so oversaturated that I don't really get any likes or retweets for things that I used to get more on. So I don't know if you guys, I don't know, maybe if an algorithm changed or something, but I wondered if you have noticed that at all.
Yes, definitely. Definitely the number of likes and responses has gone down drastically, and the number of tweets has gone up drastically. It could be a COVID thing. I've read articles about this. Actually, people have said that because of the whole stay-at-home situation, a lot more people have had time to finish something that like a dream project and start pitching it and get into these Twitter fests because they're not in person. And, so like exponentially more people are finishing novels and trying to sell them than
I think it must be true too in the querying game also. I don't know, Victoria, who was saying, I don't know if it was during one of the Manuscript Academy podcasts, but they were talking about someone who queried 1,000 agents before getting their agent, and I was just like, oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, I know somebody was, when they say something like 1,000, I've heard that too, and then I sometimes hear people say like, well, I've queried 50 people and 100 people and nothing, and I'm like, there's people who I don't even know how you can find 1,000 places to query. That's really remarkable. There must have been overlap, maybe they like changed things and requeried people, because that's a lot of agents.
But there's definitely a difference between like the older generation of writers and even people at the pitch conference would say things like, well, once you've gotten 20 rejections, like maybe you should move on. And I was like, that's like barely any at all.
That's really old school mentality. I feel like
it's not the same anymore.
Yeah. And speaking of the pitch, the Pit Mad. So I was talking to Mercedes, who swore she's going to listen to us. So shout out to Mercedes. She was telling me, she basically told me, she's really good at like the whole social media landscape in general. And she was saying how it's a numbers game, and you basically need to kind of like retweet 100 pitches for Pit Mad in order to get yours retweeted a ton. And then that way yours gets like retweeted and keeps getting up to the top of the pile, so that when agents are scrolling, yours keeps getting, mentioned. But I think that strategy is great in a way, but also I think a lot of people do that. And then what ends up happening is it gets impacted even more with all these different pitches that are being repeated again and again and again. And so and I've even seen agents say things like, oh, it's been so overwhelming, I don't know, I might pop in for a little bit. So if they pop in for like 5 minutes and they scroll on their lunch break, I mean, what are the chances that they're going to get even to your pitch when there's just like hundreds and hundreds of pitches that keep getting recycled? So I don't know. I wonder if it's even possible.
I feel like it's so easy to do it, to just make a tweet, that it's still worth doing. Yes. But I do think the chance of getting it noticed is less than it used to be, unfortunately.
I think so too. And I feel like the things people want, like the things that agents query, they get so specific sometimes that it gets a little ridiculous. I mean, maybe this is a different topic. I always tell people how like you'll read an agent's MS wish list and they'll be like, I want raccoons in space that are ballerinas. And you're like, I have a raccoon ballerina in space. You send them a query letter, and then you get a rejection. The rejection says, but they're not wearing green tutus. I really need them to wear green tutus. Like, they're not wearing green tutus, I'm out. And it's just so like, you're like, but I have exactly what you want. It's just this one stupid detail or something, like.
It's true. They can be very, very picky. Mm-hmm. And it's true. Sometimes you can't really tell for sure what they want, even if you do your research.
Yeah. It's fascinating, this whole.
What do you guys think about if you queried someone and they rejected you and then they're at a conference, like, can you just repitch? Like, will they not remember? Will they maybe change their mind? What they're doing?
I have done that. Actually, I queried an agent with a novel that I thought she would like, and she sent me a form rejection within a day. And then I met her at Thriller Fest in person, and I pretended that nothing happened. I pitched her the same novel. She sounded like she'd never heard my pitch before, and she requested a full.
This both gives me hope for,
But also, you know,
but also
getting
That exact same thing happened to me, except I did it accidentally. I didn't realize I queried this agent until I had her name, and then I put in her email, and her the last thing that I sent her popped up, and I was like, "Oops, I already sent her, and she already rejected me." But it was funny because at the conference, she acted so excited about my novel. She's like, "Oh my God, it's exactly what I wanted. I want these like topics." So I'm like, and then I was like, "Did you even read my query originally?"
Right. So that's an explanation. The other explanation is that she was faking it at the conference, which I hope is not true. But it's true. Like, what are you supposed to think then?
Well, and like, I don't know. So I, day job work for a college and do outreach recruitment sort of stuff. And I'm sure I don't get anywhere near as many emails and questions and situations as a lot of these agents. And then I'll talk to a student and it's like, "Oh, I emailed you. Don't you remember?" And I'm like, "Of course not. Like, absolutely. What do you think?" Right. So, I can't imagine that, a lot of these agents, I mean, we all have those days you go to work and some days you're literally just trying to survive, right? Just clock in, make it through the day, clock out. And, even where these people have what we might consider the dream job, like, what do you mean? You're just going to sit there and read all day? I'm sure it feels like work, 7 hours and 45 minutes a day. And so I think that's one of those things that you just got to keep putting your head down. And you're going to catch somebody at the right time, hopefully, right? As long as, Faith, I think you texted me a while ago that you sent the same agent
about that.
query, right at the same time.
I re-queried the same agent. Like, I have an Excel sheet that I try to keep track of, but I didn't put a check mark that I had done that already, and I didn't double check. So I got a second rejection. Yeah, it was the same exact query on an email. And then when I saw the name, I was like, I had a deja vu moment and realized I already had sent it to her. And I wondered if she remembered. I mean, she didn't say anything, and I wonder, but I'm just like,
I'll bet there's a pretty good chance she didn't. She probably had that deja vu moment. It was like, man, okay.
I felt bad. I just gave her more work for no reason.
Yeah, I actually just did that too. And in my defense, so what I do is I also have an Excel sheet, but I've been really lagging with it. But I also usually, before I query, I put in the agent's name into my email just to see if anything comes up. And I did that and nothing came up until I realized after I got the rejection that in the rejection, there's no name. It was just her agency name. So then I put the agency name and I found that she already had rejected me. And I was like, oopsie,
One time wasn't enough. You had to be a masochist and go in for another.
Give me all the rejection. Just give it to me. I know, it's like self-flagellation after a while.
Isn't that what querying is?
Exactly. It really is.
It always come at the worst time too. Like, you're already having a bad day and you check your email and then there's another rejection. It's like,
exactly. And then you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Well, and I guess that's a question. So for me, I remember the first time I pitched face-to-face at a conference, right? And all I do is talk to people for a living, right? So I thought I was used to it. And then you're standing in line and your mind just goes blank, right? And you're like, I am so ready for this. And I've never been more terrified, right? I don't even remember that first pitch. I just, right? And at the end of it, he says, yeah, cool, send me the whole thing. And just boom, right? All kind of those nerves were gone. And so then when I started querying, I'm like, oh yeah, no big deal. Got this, tried this before, it went great. Got that first rejection letter. And I was like, oh, it's actually, fun fact, it's right here. I printed it off years ago. It still sits next to me. I just moved in. And so below this line here, this room is a disaster. So it'll be hanging on the wall at some point. And so I got it and it stung for a second. Anymore, I'm just like, okay, there's another one. And so I hope that's the case. It gets easier, right? And it really loses its sting. Except for once in a while where you're like, oh man, this really is a Monday, right?
When you think it's exactly what they want it to.
Yeah.
I think that hurts too.
Yeah.
Yeah, or some agent you followed for a while and they're finally open. Like if they're closed for querying, they're finally open and you're like so excited and you send it to them and all of a sudden form rejection. If
20 minutes later.
But I think I think a good way to reframe it is to see the number of rejections almost like a goal. Like I got to this milestone, like 50. Now I'm going to do 100, because you can see it more as like, I'm just trying to find the right one. And that's part of the process.
That's a really good way of reframing it. What was the fastest rejection you've ever received?
Minutes.
Yeah, mine was like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Mine was 10 minutes.
I have one that was 2 hours.
Your time.
When I got that rejection in 10 minutes, and it was so funny because it was another one where I was like, this is exactly what this agent is looking for. 10 minutes later, I get a rejection. I'm like, is this an accident? Like the rejection, like press like a button. And it just, because how do you even read something in 10 minutes that you just received?
Right. It's so fast. You think it's just a delay in the submission confirmation. And you're like, how did you? Yeah. Yeah. What a bizarre feeling.
I know. And then I was like thinking, maybe should I like requery and be like, hey, I think you accidentally sent me and then I was like, then it's going to be so embarrassing if I just get another rejection in like 10 minutes.
Like, actually that was on purpose.
No, your novel sucked. I didn't like it.
Do you guys think that there's certain times of year that are better or worse to query?
Don't query in December.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely heard, between like Christmas and definitely New Year's and all of January. I've also it goes into more detail, like not over the summer, not during other holidays. Some people said not in February, but I feel like you can start in February.
It depends though. Because there is a lot of discussion about that online, and some people say, they give you these really rigid lists, like don't query between this date and this date and this date. And then some people say just whenever. I just saw somebody on Twitter was saying that they got the call from an agent on New Year's Day.
Whoa.
Blacklisted date.
There are no rules. There are no rules.
Right. Or just do it whenever.
And I guess a question I would have then is, as folks kind of in that early career, do you have the luxury of being that picky, right? Or is it just, hey, if they're open, I'm sending them a letter? I agree about the December thing. And I think I've sent 2 since the beginning of the year just because nothing's open. And maybe this is me asking if I've been doing it wrong. But in my mind, I'm like, their submission portal's open.
Right. And also from what I've seen, a lot of agents are so backlogged, they're finishing queries from 3 months earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you sent your query now, it's probably not going to be read right now.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Eventually, it's just going to be lying there. So it's okay. They're going to get to it. They're not going to delete it just because you sent it, in the wrong month.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they said that they were closed to queries and you're not supposed to query them.
What's the latest response anybody's ever gotten?
More than 6 months, probably. I think one time I got someone at 8 months, like a form rejection that I forgot that I even queried them. I'm like,
it's long when you just totally forgot it was out there.
You're like, oh, what? I queried you? Oh, this novel? Wow, this has been a long time.
I got one. It was almost 16 months later. It was right after our conference that we were all at. So what was that, summer 2018? Is that right?
Was it 2017 or 2018?
I can't remember. Anyways, it was 16 months later. It had gotten to the point, like I had given up on querying that story, and I get this letter. I'm like, all right, insult to injury, I guess.
You would think they just wouldn't answer.
You would think.
I know. At that point, you're like,
they really needed you to know.
Yeah.
They really needed you to know, exactly.
That's right.
My God, sometimes I wonder how much of this is power play. Like I know that agents are people and they're just trying to make a living, but sometimes I'm like, can you have a little less ego about things? Like, I'm an agent, I know best. And I don't know, maybe that's just my
I think because agents are answering to other people that are being super critical on them too, that there's so much pressure.
Sure.
And I just think it must trickle down, and we're at the bottom.
Yeah. You know, Catherine, that actually reminds me of what you said about the agent that you had, the one who's like, no, I know best, change it to this thing. You know, that's what I'm talking about, where I'm like, and you know what it reminded me of when he said, like, change your first chapter to the perspective of this younger person. It kind of reminded me of like older fantasy novels. Like, I think a lot of older, like not old, but like in the 90s, I think there were fantasy novels that started with the perspective, or like early 2000s, they started with the perspective of somebody who's not the main character. So you can get like a perspective of the main character from like a distance almost. I mean, I've read a couple of, like a few of those. And so I feel like maybe he was going off old information in a way.
It does seem like a hard sell now, kind of like how everyone says they don't want a book with a prologue. Like they want the first chapter to be a reflection of what the book is going to be like.
Yeah.
And people were misled by that, you know, when he sent them a query, let's say in the first chapter, and people said, oh, this is exciting, I want to read about this girl. And they're like, well, she's a minor character in the story. Like, she's not, the book isn't about her. They thought it would be her journey and her sort of growing up and coming of age in this environment. And it's not about her at all. It's like a different kind of story. So I think that was really misleading. But actually, we had that conversation before we parted ways. And I asked him, why do you think that novel didn't sell? You believed in it as an agent. You believed in that novel in the form that we left it in on submission. And he says, you know what? I don't know. That's one of the reasons that I know I'm not the right agent for you, because I don't know why I couldn't sell that novel. I thought it was guaranteed. I thought I could sell it. And the fact that I couldn't means that this isn't going to work out.
I'm actually wondering, do you feel like it puts you in a worse spot after? Because then when you're querying, like, do you say, oh, I had an agent and he couldn't sell it, then it's going to make people not want to pick it up? Or do you not mention it?
Well, it depends. The novel, the second one that he dropped like 2 weeks into submissions, that really hurt because I put so much into that novel and I couldn't keep selling it, because even if I got an agent for that novel, they would be sending it to some of the same editors that he sent it to, who'd already seen it and who'd had it withdrawn from them. And they would just feel like they were being jerked around. People don't like that. So that novel has basically been burned. My only way of selling that novel is maybe sending it to a small press that accepts unagented submissions. So something like that is a problem. And that was, I think, for me personally, that was a big mistake, that because I was so confident about having an agent, I put all my eggs in one basket. And I thought, I'm going to spend all my time writing this amazing novel that he's going to sell. It's always good to have many different projects going. No matter how successful you think you are at the moment, you never know. So I had to.
It's a really tough position.
It's really tough. You just have to have a lot of other things at the same time, so that if something falls through unexpectedly, you have something else that's ready to go. And like right now, I have all these different projects that I'm working on. And, you know, one day I might get another rejection for the prose novel that I'm selling, but I might get, you know, my film might be accepted into another festival. Or, you know, I get notes from my editors for the graphic novel, because that's already something that's happening. But, you know, you just can't stop and say, this is my project, this is the one, this is what's going to make my career. If you have different things at different stages, then there's always something positive and something negative at the same time. So I think for me, that helps me balance it out.
I have a question regarding that. Sorry, is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to ask, like, what if you had taken the names of the editors? Like, if you had known what editors he's queried, could you use that novel and just not send it to those editors?
You can, yes. He actually, again, we had that conversation and he said, so here's a list of all the people I sent it to. So if you get another agent and you try to sell this novel again, you just tell them, don't send it to these people. Also, the turnaround in these jobs is really fast. So let's say the agent, the editor he sent it to at HarperCollins they might not be there anymore a year
Mhm.
later.
Mhm.
So it could be a different person. They might have a different opinion about the novel. Again, times change. Every few months, there's a new trend. There's a new thing that you can't do, another thing that you should be doing. And, something that didn't sell today might sell tomorrow. You never know. So I am not considering that novel dead. And I have sent that out to a number of small presses, and I already have some full requests out on that novel that my agent supposedly burned. So, it's just about keeping it going.
Yeah, I would probably say that it was repped by him, but that he changed like genre representation or something.
Actually, he did. So I
I
have
think that would work in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, I have admitted that to people. I mean, other agents that I've spoken to, and I would say, yes, I have been represented. So it's like, I've been on the inside. I know what it's like to be represented. I've had an author agent relationship, so I'm not like a complete newbie. And it's not my fault that he left me. We parted, we agreed to part. And it's not because of my failure as an author, it's because we didn't work well together. And he's doing something else now. He's not representing my genre. So today I would never have queried him because he represents picture books and I write, these really dark and nasty psychological historical thrillers. So that's not what he wants.
That he's still having nightmares about.
He actually told me I gave him nightmares.
Isn't that kind of the dream though? Like,
Yeah, that's very
weirdly.
powerful.
You affected his psyche.
Exactly. That's what he said. He's like, I actually don't want to fix this novel. It doesn't need to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just
He's
afraid
like,
of
it's me, not you.
Exactly.
I feel like that's a lot of this industry. It's me, not you. But then, like, it's not helpful because you can't. What are you gonna do? Your book is your book. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going on an hour and a half, guys. I mean, we can continue or we can pause here and maybe this could be like a reoccurring, like once a month or every other month or something where we can continue doing and we can like have different people join.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Does
This
sound
was great.
sound good? Because I feel like this is it really helps. Just the morale, all the information is great too. And just chatting to people who understand the struggle.
Right.
And I love Catherine's idea of just trying everything
Mhm.
and not getting discouraged. That's a good
You're
thing.
such a hustler, Catherine. You're such a good example.
I try. You're just trying to survive.
That's what life is.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Any closing comments? Does anyone have any, I don't know, any things to say?
Keep going.
Yeah, and I would just echo, what was said a second ago. Just thank you for putting this together. Thank you for bringing these writing communities back together. The world's in a spot where it needs community, and especially in something like this, where it's a ton of fun, and it's also really hard to try to figure it out alone, and not having been able to go places and continue to meet other writers and those people who are going to offer you that encouragement. So this is great. So thank you. If anybody wants to read my first couple chapters, let me know.
Yes,
I would love some feedback.
Yes.
So
we can start an email chain.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So
I think we have each other's emails, right? Yeah, because we've been.
Yeah, in the email contact. Yes, I would love to, for sure. I think it's really helpful to have different eyes of people who actually understand the industry, like I said earlier. So thanks, guys. Well, and thank you, viewers, whoever got to the end. Thank you for your patience and curiosity to listen to us. And we'll be sure to let you know. And oh yeah, if you did get to the end of this, which I should have said this in the beginning, but please click the subscribe button and the notification bell for future video notifications. But yeah, everybody, thank you for visiting, and we'll see you guys next time.